Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. Zelensky shown the Ukrainians F-16s above Ukraine. This is the F-16 that was flying above Odessa, and the sources are saying that Ukrainians at first stage of the use of this machine are going to use them just as air defense. Of course, we understand this because the Ukrainians received just 10 aircrafts of this type. Of course, it's nothing in comparison with the number of aircrafts that the Russians currently have, but anyway, probably the Ukrainians will be able using these 10 machines to protect at least Odessa area, and the most important, to secure the territory in the vicinity of Odessa and Odessa port. So this is probably the first target of the Ukrainians in this stage of the special military operation that they will try to achieve by the end of this year. Furthermore, I'll remind you that by the end of this year, the Ukrainians are going to receive additional 10 F-16s. Now, let's move further. Let's talk about the situation on the ground, and we have very interesting details in the vicinity of Robotyne. The Russian sources published the video how the Russian soldiers were storming and assaulting the Ukrainian positions somewhere in the fields between Verbova and Robotyne. The video was geolocated. In this video, we can see two Russian soldiers that were clearing the trenches and that they managed to capture 4 Ukrainian soldiers. This is a very interesting video, very weird situation, because if we increase the numbers of updates since the beginning of July, let's say, we don't have anything from these fields. We have the artillery strikes, we have the different types of bombardments a little bit further in the north, in the northwest, northeastern direction, and nothing from these fields. And a few days ago, we have already made the conclusion that most likely all these territories were already captured by the Russians during the previous phases of the special military operation, but we haven't adjusted this map because we didn't adjust the map because we didn't have enough of evidence to do this. And today we got the first geolocation of how the Russians were capturing the trenches. It's very difficult to understand how exactly the Russians got there. Maybe the Russians were moving this way, maybe the Russians were moving from different directions, and so on. Anyway, for now we have colored this territory as a contested area. We need more details, we need more evidence to change the color for 100%. Now let's move further and let's talk about Urozhaine. During the previous night, during the previous 12 hours, we got additional updates, and the Ukrainian sources published the video of how they were repelling another Russian attack in this direction. There are a lot of episodes, a lot of scenes of clashes, not just in the vicinity of Urozhaine, but also in Volchansk, in South Donetsk direction, the vicinity of Kostiantynivka. And one of the episodes that took place, that we can see in the video, took place exactly in this point. So the Russians began offensive in the northern direction, and the Ukrainians were bombing the Russian forces. Currently, we haven't adjusted the map because we also don't understand whether the Russians managed to reach this tree line, whether the Russians managed to move even further. The only thing we know for sure that since the beginning of August, the Russians were bombing this territory heavily with flamethrower systems, with just regular artillery, with multiple launch rocket strikes, and of course they were clearing this territory with FPV drones. So maybe the Russians have captured this territory. For now, we are not going to change the map, but we are keeping in our mind that probably there is a progress of armed forces of Russian Federation. Now let's move further, and we are going to talk about Kostiantynivka. During the previous 12 hours, the Ukrainian sources published the video of another Russian attack towards the city. We see the moment when the Russians landed in this area and start clearing trenches, fortifications, probably started digging in deeper. The video was geolocated, and the episode with the landing infantry took place exactly in the vicinity of this building. And based on this video, we have adjusted the map and added additional territory under complete Russian control. Now let's move further. We have a lot of very interesting details from Pokrovsk direction. Let's talk about the northern part, about the area between Timofeyevka and Lysychna. We've been discussing a lot about the trenches, about the stronghold that located between these two territories during the previous days. The Russians managed to capture these 3 lines, but as you can see, the Russians decided not to move further in the direction of the trenches because probably it's too risky. And as you can see, according to the latest update, most likely the Russians decided to move to attack Lysychina and to bypass the trenches from the south and from the southwest. So this is approximately the route of Russian movement, and we have the mappers update. The pro-Ukrainian mappers confirmed this progress, and now we understand that the Russians are planning to attack Lysychina itself and to force the Ukrainians, if there are Ukrainians in this area, to fall back towards Sviridovka, or maybe even to encircle them. So let's wait for additional updates. Obviously the situation will continue developing not in Ukraine's favor. Now let's talk about Zhelanne. During the previous 24 hours, during the previous night, we got additional updates from the territory. According to pro-Ukrainian mappers, the Russians managed to improve their positions in the city itself, in the village itself. Just during the previous nights, during the local time, the Russians captured these buildings in the streets. Obviously significant progress. Now we see that the Russians have very strong control over the main supply road that Ukrainians used to have between Zhelanne and Zhelanne. The Ukrainians have significant problems with supply and support. The roads, the main supply roads were cut to the east of the village, to the west, and most likely the Ukrainians would be forced to fall back in the very near future. Otherwise they will be encircled by the Russians. Now let's move further and let's talk about Toretsk agglomeration. During the previous night, during the previous 12 hours, we received significant number of updates and details about this direction. The situation is getting worse and worse, and Toretsk is collapsing. First of all, let's discuss the additional progress on the ground. The Russian sources published the video of how they were repelling a possible Ukraine attack somewhere in Pivnichne. The video was geolocated, of course. In this video we can see that the Russians first destroyed the Ukrainian Humvee, and then the Russian soldier left the building. So let's take a look at this moment. We can see the Russian soldier, there he go, he's leaving the building, and then he start attacking the destroyed Humvee, trying probably to check whether the Ukrainians survived there or something like this, and then he moved back to the building. So the video was geolocated exactly in this point. The Russian soldier was exactly in this point, and he was attacking the Ukrainian Humvee that was destroyed here. Based on this video, most of the mappers have adjusted their maps, and we did the same, and we have added additional territory under complete Russian control. Right before we start making the video, we got another video that was published, in this case by the Ukrainian sources. In this video that was published by 32nd Mechanized Brigade, we can see a series of FPV drone attacks on Russian positions along this street, along this area, and after the building was destroyed, the Russian soldiers began moving back. So the Ukrainians attacked the Russians along Kosmonautov Street, so FPV drone attacked this territory, and then the Russians, when the building was destroyed, reduced to ruins, fell back towards Stepovo area. This video confirms additional Russian progress, Russian control, and we colored the map, of course. Now let's talk about unconfirmed reports. Uncontested area. Pro-Ukrainian mappers stated that during the previous night, during the previous 12 hours, the Russians improved their positions in the eastern part of Pivnichne. The Russians captured all these streets like Summer Street, like Pradolna Street, like Kievska Street. So these blocks were captured by the Russians. Now let's talk about another important video. During the previous 12 hours, the Russian sources published the video how they were attacking the Ukrainian forces with Krasnopol. So from this perspective, nothing special we can see in this video, but if we take a look at this area closer, we're gonna see that there is a bridge. There was a bridge. Telling the truth, let's take a look at the video once again. As you can see, according to this video, the bridge was already damaged or even destroyed, and the Russians were bombing some temporary position, probably of the Ukrainians who were, let's say, controlling or who were operating or organizing some, let's say, movements from one side on another with some different equipment. The Russians discovered and destroyed these positions. And if we increase the numbers of updates since the beginning of July, then we're gonna see that on the let's say on the 18th of July, the Russians published the video how they destroyed another bridge a little bit further in the northern direction. So summarizing everything, we can make a conclusion that Ukrainians have a very poor logistic. Every single bridge along the Krivoy Toretsk river was already destroyed by the Russians during the previous months. First one of the bridges was destroyed on the 17th of July. Another bridge, at least the evidence that the bridge is destroyed, we got on the 5th of August. And this is a very, very bad situation because there are no more bridges. There are a lot of bridges, of course, pontoon bridges, but the main are already destroyed. And of course, we don't know the current status of pontoon or temporary bridges that were built by the Ukrainians during this Russian Toretsk offensive operation. Anyway, summarizing everything, the logistics have very big problems. Now let's move further. As for Chasiv Yar direction, there are very heavy clashes in the central part, and the Ukrainian sources confirmed Russian control over Stupki Golubkovsky. According to different mappers and according even to geolocations, as I remember, this territory was captured by the Russians a long time ago. Now let's move to Pivnichne. There are very heavy clashes for this village, for this Fedorovka and Pivnichne village. Today we got additional batch of videos of how the Russians were FPV-droning the Ukrainian positions along the main supply road and along the main street of this village. Lots of strikes, lots of attacks, significant losses, and so on. But the most important to understand the current situation in the village is better to increase the numbers of this since the beginning of the month. And as you can see, this part of Siversk direction was under very heavy fire from the Russian side for the previous few days. So that means that the assault operation from the Russian side continues. The Russians most likely are about to answer the villages or have already done this. Most likely today we're going to receive additional updates from this direction. As for northern Kupiansk direction and as for the Kharkiv direction, during the previous night, during the past 12 hours, we haven't received anything special or important, just the regular FPV drone activity from the Russian side in the southern part of the village or the city or the ruins that left from this. So nothing important. And that's it for this short video of Military Summary channel. Reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.